Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Run Till You're Done. This is a continuation of the previous episode. Alice Beveridge has joined us, talking about sports psychology. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I'd recommend you go back. This one will be independent of it, but it's worthwhile. So, on to the first question. Well, continued questions. Nikki?
Thanks for joining us again, Alice.
Oh, you're welcome. I love these conversations, so I'm glad to be back.
So, continuing on from episode 1, as Mike says, the next listener question we have is, how do you build motivation or just have that discipline to get off your backside when you can't be bothered? Not everyone is as lucky as Ross to have someone like yourself to say, shift out the door.
I think a lot of this comes down to just simply acknowledging the fact that you will not always be motivated, and like motivation is the wrong reason to do something. Like having a goal and a purpose as to why you're doing it, useful, that can produce motivation, but nobody wakes up every single day raring to go. So when we start to look at this, like if we simply acknowledge that motivation won't always be there, we then have to rely on something else. If you're relying on motivation to get you out the door, you're going to last 3 or 4 days, because then we get bored of whatever it is that we're doing. Just think New Year. You know, every new year people make their New Year's resolutions, and then like I always get annoyed because there's people in my swimming pool. I'm like, this is my swimming pool. Get out of my swimming pool. I know it's 7 o'clock in the morning. This is when I swim. How dare you all be here? And then within a week they've gone, because the motivation wears off and the habit that they were in before takes control again. So if we want to be motivated, what we really actually want is discipline. Discipline is what kicks in when motivation wears off. Discipline and routine and setting your non-negotiables makes it much easier to say, I am doing this, not I have to do this or I should do this. Like guilt's not always useful in this space. It's I am doing this and I get to do this, and just remind yourself of what your goals are and why you're doing it. You also just want to think, like, how do I reduce friction? Like I swim every morning, right? I don't wake up every morning going, yay, I get to go and drive 2 miles to the swimming pool and swim up and down for 45 minutes. I wake up at 6:38 every morning to my first alarm and curse the world. I'm like, no, I do not want to get up. I'm not going today. I'll go at lunchtime again, right? Then, this is much to Ross's delight if he's on a rest day, 3 minutes later, my second alarm will go, which is my get over yourself alarm, which is, right, you've had your little wins, you won't actually go at lunchtime if you don't go, here's your second warning, right? And if I do not get up out of my bed at that point at 6:44, the most god-awful noise comes out of my phone. It is the glass chimes iPhone alarm. If you need a hideous noise to get you out of bed, I highly recommend it, because if that one goes off, I get booted by Ross out of the bed. It's like, get out of here. So I don't rely purely on my motivation in the morning to get me out of the pool, up and out of bed into the pool. I rely on the fact that if I don't do it, then I don't get to do it. And if I don't do it, I am grumpy. And I do it because I enjoy it, and it's the only quiet time I get in my life ever. So you have to build these into habits and routines. For some people, this is having your running kit laid out. Right, some people will take this to an extreme and say, I sleep in my running kit. You lot are weirdos, right? If it works for you, fine. Please don't sleep in your trainers. That's horribly uncomfortable. But like having your stuff nearby is going to make it easier. You can do like your power countdown. You can do this at any point in the day, which is, right, I'm going to do this thing in 5 seconds. And I'm going to count myself down from 5 to 1. And on 1, I am standing up. Because once you're standing up, it's easier to get going. And I think it's just remembering that you don't ever regret not doing it, but you do feel guilty if you don't.
Yeah.
You know, like never have I gone, I am so sad I went for a swim today. I wish I hadn't done that. You know, so it's, a lot of it is self-talk. Just sort of be a bit of a bully for yourself sometimes, because once you get started, it'll be easier.
Right, moving on to the next listener question. It's a lot of our listeners obviously have kids, or at least the person that's asked this is how, like, they're motivated to do sport, but how do you get your kids to be motivated to do the sport or enjoy it?
So I think this depends on the nature of your kids. Like, you will have some kids that are naturally competitive and want to get into some form of competitive sport, and that comes with its own challenges, but it's generally easier to get your more competitive kids to enjoy sport and just get out and moving. Others are much less competitive, so sport needs to be really fun and not pressured. Like, it does not have to look like running round a running track. It could be kicking a ball about the garden. It could be going to the local tennis courts for 15-20 minutes and trying lots of different things. In our house, we have semi-sporty kids, I would say. My daughter was sort of a performance gymnast for a while. And I was like, cool, my God, she's following in mummy's footsteps. What a delight. Amn't I a wonderful parent? And she also happened to be in the gym where I teach, which I was like, I never wanted to teach my own child. And about a year ago, I was like, she's not happy. She doesn't really want to be here. And I was always like, I will never be the parent that makes my child do something because I think they should do it. It's quite interesting because I had the conversation with her a year ago, and it took her 6 months to be like, no, I want to stop. And it was emotional, like, it was really emotional because we were both invested in that sport. Like, I still spend a huge amount of time at gymnastics, always have though, right? Well, like, her identity wasn't gymnastics because I wanted her to be a gymnast. It's because she came along and she enjoyed it until she didn't anymore. So you have to be aware that they're not going to enjoy the same things the whole time. And you have to be okay with giving them the opportunity to try different things if you're in a position to be able to do that. These days, for her, since she's in pony club, well, that was a fun transition. But she loves it. She absolutely loves it. Like, her wee face when she's out riding, absolutely phenomenal. My son, I'm going to put it out there, probably he's got much more fast twitch muscles than his sister, so probably should be the sportier one of the two. See, convincing him to put a controller down, or the fact that he can in fact sit in a space without being attached to a phone playing Roblox is a completely different conversation. Whereas every sport that he tries, he's all right at. It took him a really long time to find one that he enjoyed. He to come to rugby, he's size hobbit, right? He's the smallest kid in all the land. And I was like, this is not the right place for you. And he's like, Mummy, I am never doing that again. And I was like, good, because I do not wish to stand on the side of a pitch in the freezing cold forevermore. And then one day he went to me, Mummy, I want to do sword fighting. And I'm like, that's not a real sport. And then I went, oh, actually it is. It's called fencing. And I realised I'd become horribly East Lothian with one child in pony club and the other one fencing, and I was questioning all of my life choices. But these days he does fencing once a week, and it's like the most joyful time of his week because somebody gives him a sword and he gets to stab other people with it, right? It's brilliant. So I think fun and interest and enjoyment is so important. Like, all that really matters when they're young is that they move. Like, you are not a performance, like, I work in performance gymnastics, right? I have worked in performance gymnastics for a very long time. It's always been on the side of my day job, but it has been a huge factor of my life. I was in women's artistic for 15 years as a coach, took a break after I had my second child, got sucked into another discipline as my daughter started enjoying it, and just went with it because I love the sport. Like, I love it. Okay. I also know that the sport has many, many flaws, and I have seen those flaws play out. And so much of it comes from parent expectation of, my child should be the best at this. Do you know what? They can come and they can enjoy it and they can get better at it, but they're not all going to be the best because, by definition, not everybody can be the best at something. That's why it's called the best. Otherwise, it's called being the same. So you have to put your own parental expectations to one side. You might get a kid that's massively into it and is brilliantly talented and has the right mindset and avoids injury throughout the whole of their childhood and goes on to be a success. But real success when it comes to sport and children's motivation is getting them to enjoy moving their body. That can be dance, that can be formal lessons in something, that can be going for a jog or a run around your local park or doing park run. It can be anything that just involves movement. We don't need early specialization, and I am unpopular sometimes in the gymnastics world for saying that, right? I am very much like, oh cool, your kid wants to do hockey as well, go for it. Your kid wants to swim as well, excellent. Because my priority in sport for children is that they get into adulthood enjoying some sort of sport. They don't have to enjoy my sport. I just want them to enjoy some form of sport. So variety is really important. Now, I know that kids change their mind all the time, and sometimes I'm like, you're not allowed a new dream until this block has been paid for, right? Once we get to the end of this paid up for block, you can try the new thing. But it's letting them choose, giving them freedom within your means, and recognising that you don't have to pay for a class for them to be doing sport. You can just go out and do it.
And how do you help your athletes deal with criticism or setbacks?
So this very much depends on which athlete it is. So from like a headspace perspective, each of our athletes have such different strengths and areas for development and self-talk and relationships with themselves. Like how I support each of them is going to be so different, but generally it comes down to like how we reflect and how self-aware we are. You know, if we want to deal with criticism or setback, it's really working out, well, what does that criticism or setback mean to me? What is useful feedback and what is just noise? You know, we spend so much time connected to like Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is of people showing us how it should be done. You know, like as an almost 40-year-old woman, my Instagram for some reason seems to think I care what 20-year-olds look like in the gym. I'm like, do you know what? See, when I was 20 years old, I looked great in the gym. But these days I have 2 kids, multiple jobs, ultramarathon running husband, and like approaching perimenopause. It's like, I think it's fair to say that what my expectations for myself should look like are very different to what is being fed to me. So we need to be able to weed out what the noise is. Like, what is the background nonsense that we're being fed that just isn't relevant to us or our sport? You just have to look at different sports and what the physique of athletes looks like, right? To be able to work out that what works in high rocks doesn't work in rugby, what works in rugby doesn't work in running, and what works in running doesn't work in gymnastics. Though I will say gymnastics is an excellent base sport for every single sport ever, because it teaches all the stuff that really matters. I say that really flippantly, but genuinely it is. Even if you don't go on to be an Olympic star, that core strength, that discipline, that coordination really feeds into all of those things. But we have to know what we are trying to do to be able to deal with the criticism or the setback. Something I think I said in the last episode was, would you ask this person for advice? And if the answer to that is no, then why are you listening to their criticism? Why do you care what they think? And a lot of it is normalizing failure as part of growth. It's like, yeah, you didn't manage that today, but you might tomorrow. You know, some little shifts in language can make a big difference. I didn't complete that race versus I didn't complete that race yet. Sounds really cheesy, but they're 2 totally different mindsets. You know, I'll do that the next time. You know, if you go and you're doing some resistance training in the gym, right? If I went in tomorrow and I'm like, I'm going to lift this much, the chance of me actually being able to lift that much, very, very slim. If I go consistently every day and build that weight up, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's the exact same with our self-talk. You don't wake up one day and go, I'm not critical of myself anymore, right? I'm no longer affected by setbacks. You kind of just have to say, right, this is a work in progress. We're so used to seeing before and after pictures that we forget that there's an awful lot of hard work in that middle bit. So you have to reframe the criticism as data rather than judgment. And I know that's the geekiest thing I'm probably going to say today, but all feedback is data, not all data is useful. right? Work out which data is useful to you. It all tells a story. You just need to pick the bits that are actually going to help you. And there's also a great big dollop of self-compassion alongside it. You know, like we're human. You're not going to get it right all the time. Nothing's going to go in your favor all the time. That's part of life, and that's probably makes it more interesting. So whatever this setback is, it's going to be part of what the next thing looks like. It's part of that next chapter of that next story of whatever way you want to frame it.
All right, the next question, I'm going to slip in with one of my own questions here. I've experienced this a few times, and it's usually, well, it's always after 100 miles, after running 24 hours or more. I'm exhausted. One example of what I'm about to say is when I was running UTMB, I'd been up for, I'd been running for 30 hours. So whatever time I was up before that, I can't even remember what time the race started at. So say 30 plus hours. And I got up to the final climb. I think La Flégère is the place you're going to. But I got up to the top of the mountain, and I could clearly see, I knew where I was going. Never been there before in my life. Never been to the Alps. That was the only time. But I knew in my head where I was going. And I've had, as I say, I've had it in other races where I've used Google Maps to do a recce, but Google Maps doesn't always go in off-road places. So it's like, but I knew where I was going. How, like, I try and explain to myself that my eyes are working at a different speed than my brain because I'm so tired. Is there any insight in that?
I mean, that's literally what is happening at that point. If you think about anybody that's a specialist in something, right? You spend so much time out on trails, out on routes, even if you've never been there before. If it's a frequently trodden path, there are cues that you can't always see, that you don't always pay attention to, but subconsciously we take those cues in. And most of the time it just allows us to wander or roam freely. What starts to happen when you get to the point where your sort of consciousness is a little bit doolally, right, is those automatic processes start to kick in. So it's not like you magically had the yellow brick road appear in front of you and it's like, follow this, on you go. It's basically your brain taking over and going, we know how to get you home. You know, like, we know how you're going to get there. And we don't need to do too much thinking about that, because we can find the subtle cues that tell us where the path is. We've got enough of a notion of how we're getting from here to there, whether it's from Google Maps or watching videos of things that people have done, or even just seeing the lights in the distance. Like, instinct starts to kick in a little bit at that point, and it can feel very kind of transcendental. You're like, oh, suddenly I have like risen above the capabilities of humanity. But it's really your brain just going, I'm going to keep you safe because that's my job. You know, it's part of your survival instinct kicking in, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to do. And a lot of people probably never put themselves in a situation where they need that to happen, but it is almost that internal sort of, it's almost like a fight or flight kind of response. It kicks in of, I need to protect myself. Your brain is inherently selfish. It wants you to survive, and it will do what it needs to make you survive. It'll shut down every other unnecessary system in order to get you where it is you're trying to go. And for you, in the kind of things that you do, that's finish line. So when your brain has stopped functioning properly and you feel a bit delirious, those subconscious processes are so well honed because of the hours and hours and hours and hours that you put into things to get you there. And Mike, you probably do know every detail of that course. Like, I think I've got the measure of you today. It's like, I think you're very detail orientated. I don't imagine you go into anything without a really clear idea of what it might be like, even if you can't get a step by step. That's going to build up enough of a picture in your brain for it to be able to put the jigsaw pieces together without really asking your permission.
Well, thank you for the insight. It almost makes me feel that, well, next time I experience it, I know that it's normal. So that makes it just let my brain do its
Yeah.
job.
Just trust yourself.
Yep.
If you fall off a cliff, I never said any of that. But yeah.
It was a terrific explanation, but the thought that went through my head there was, imagine if you hallucinated a yellow brick road. How wonderful would that be?
Yeah.
That's probably another subject in itself. I've never had hallucinations.
Really? Oh, Ross has the best hallucinations. I've had some weird and wonderful conversations with him while he's been hallucinating while running. It's beautiful. Like Morris Minor, Snoopy driving a Morris Minor over Llandaffra was one that's stuck in my head for many years.
I've had the sort of, oh, there's something over there, then I look over and it's not there. But never an imaginary thing. It's just a sort of trick of the light, which I don't class as a hallucination.
And I've not ran long enough yet to know if I do it.
Hallucinations are just your brain trying to make sense of stuff. It's what it's doing all the time. And when you're very sleep deprived, and they usually happen at night, like when it's only getting little snippets of information, it's just trying to put it together into something that makes sense. And when you're very, very tired, those things don't always make sense. So we start to see weird stuff.
See, Mike's very sensible, so that's probably why he's not had any, whereas I can't wait for mine.
Oh, I think that's part of the explanation of why I run so far for so long is because I want to experience the hallucinations.
You're chasing the hallucinations. There's much easier ways of making that happen.
Look right out of my mouth, Alice. So Mike got in there with one of his own questions, so I'm going to get in on the act as well. The power of manifestation, is this a thing?
Yes, kind of. Like that's one of those really annoying questions. Manifestation is one of those words that the Instagram community love, the self-help community love. Let's just manifest a better life for ourselves. We have to be really careful around how we talk about manifestation, because it's like, oh, if you send positive vibes out, the good stuff will come back. Kind of. Like, proper manifestation is actually called just having a really good plan that you put into action. You can manifest, and I'm using annoying air quotes, good outcomes if you implement processes afterwards that make that outcome more likely. So the manifestation part of it, like this is where I'd say you have realistic optimism versus unrealistic optimism, right? Optimism as a human trait is a very useful and psychologically protective trait to have. So if you know somebody that just sees the silver lining in stuff, they are naturally optimistic, they are glass half full, this is a really protective trait, unless it's tipped over into that word that we've spoken about on the last podcast of denial, right? Unrealistic optimism is really just denial of bad stuff happening, and that doesn't generally make the bad thing magically disappear, right? Realistic optimism is where this sort of manifesting really happens. Realistic optimism is, what is the best possible outcome here? What am I hoping for? And what actions do I need to put in place to make that happen, right? Any of us can go, I'm going to run 100 miles. Not any of us can actually do it. And it's not because physically, well, there might be physical differences here, right? It's not necessarily because you physically can't do it. It's because you psychologically haven't made the choices that are going to make it easier for you to do it. Now, if you are realistically saying, I'm going to run 100 miles, your life has to look very different to somebody that is not going to run 100 miles. Like, if you compare my training peaks to Ross's training peaks, they do not look the same, because we have very, very different goals. Right? For him to run X, Y, or Z, he's not going to manifest himself to a finish line. Right? He's going to set a goal and then channel a huge amount of time, energy, effort, passion into that goal. And that's what manifestation really is. It's choosing something to focus on and then shifting and changing your behaviors to make it happen. there is a link between this and positive self-talk, right? It's like you can't wake up every day and go, I feel fantastic today, and hope to feel fantastic, right? There is a sort of weird thing. This going psychologist on you again, right? There's like this cool study that they did where they got bunches of people to watch comedy movies, right? And they had different conditions. One was they just had to watch it, and at the end of it, rate how funny it was. One, they got people to watch it, but they had to put a pen in their mouth like this. This is great podcast material, like this, between their teeth, with a pen sticking away. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. Otherwise, putting the lid between my teeth with the pen facing away from me, right? Like that. And then they had to rate it. And then in a third condition, they took the pen and they put it like across, like horizontally in their mouth, in their teeth like this, and got them to rate it again. And in the condition where the pen was in their mouth horizontally, they rated it as funnier than in either of the other two conditions, right? And the reason for that is because if you take that pen away, you've already predisposed your face into a smile, right? You take that away, these cheeks are already engaged. That way, not at all. It's quite hard to smile with it that way, right? If it's that way, you're already kind of smiling, and there's this connection between our emotional experience of the world and how we feel, right? And like, what's going on outside? How do I feel about that? And quite often we go, oh, this thing happened out there that made me feel happy or sad. Whereas sometimes I can feel happy, therefore better things happen, right? And it's a two-way street. So manifestation, if we set ourselves goals and we are positive about it, we are more likely to see the good things. You can turbocharge this by doing things like keeping a gratitude journal. You can prime yourself for optimism by going, right, what are 3 good things that happened today? And it doesn't have to be big groundbreaking stuff. It can be, I had a cup of tea that was the perfect temperature, right? It can be I had a really enjoyable run. It doesn't need to be connected to times. It's like, maybe I just went out and saw something awesome while I was out there. Maybe it's I got up early and ran today, so I had time to do X, Y, or Z with the kids later on. You can supercharge your manifestation by actively practicing things that make you notice good, positive stuff more, because the happier you feel, the more likely you are to do good things. It's why, like, every so often I go, oh, isn't it really annoying that sleeping properly and eating well and exercising regularly makes me feel better about the world? How unfair. I want to feel good about the world by being wrapped up like a sausage roll in a duvet, eating chocolate. But apparently that's very short-termism. So it's like, I struggle to say that manifestation in the Instagram style of the word exists. I'm much happier to say that setting goals and having a plan and looking for the silver linings does help make stuff happen. That makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. It explains the question a lot more than I. When Nikki said what the question was, I had to Google it. Like, what does manifestation mean? I'm obviously not hip enough to be in with your Insta crowd, the self-help nonsense. My opinion. What I thought of it was, if you go into a race and you don't believe that you are going to win that race, then you're not going to win that race.
Apart from the times that you do, because everybody else wasn't as good as you.
Yeah, but if you didn't believe that you were going to win it, then you probably wouldn't win it.
Yeah, I think that can definitely have an impact. It's kind of, it's a really old school saying, this one. It's like, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't define what that success is based on things that you can't necessarily control, right? So like, winning a race is a really interesting one, because you can't control how somebody else performs. You can only control how you perform in that race, but their performance might impact your performance. So if you're winning a race and somebody is coming up on your tail, that's probably going to make you run faster than if there's nobody behind you and you can take your foot off the gas. So it's like, your performance can be influenced by other people, but you can't control if that person actually just has more left in the tank than you and powers past you and leaves you for dust.
Yeah.
Well, that leads on to something else I was going to ask about. And you're saying about the person coming up behind you.
Mhm.
I find that if you're leading a race, or even if you're being like at the back of a race, something behind you chasing you. So you're being chased by the cutoffs, or you're in first place and you're being chased by second. That person might not be there. But I've always said that paranoia is the biggest motivator.
Yeah, and it's funny, people get so funny when you say that you can use negative things to motivate you. Like, oh no, you should be positively motivated all the time. Nonsense. You get motivated by positive stuff and negative stuff. It's not whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, it's whether it's helpful or not. If while you're in a race, in a performance situation, if the fear of somebody catching you is enough for you to keep on going, or the fear of that cut off or that sweeper coming up behind you is enough for you to dig in and push a little bit more, then although you're using a potentially negative thought to motivate you, it's still inspiring action. So it's like a positive or negative motivator. Like, people are motivated in totally different ways. If you're always negatively motivated to the point where you're like, well, I'm going to do this to prove you wrong, then it's probably not quite as satisfying as going, I did a really hard thing because I wanted to see if I could do it. But when you're actually in those performance moments, if you're like, oh, if that person passes me again, right? Because let's go with, for the reality, right? Most runners are not at the front. Right, there's usually a little group at the front, right? You've got this big pack in the middle, and then there's the ones at the back. And it doesn't matter where you are in that pack, the majority, well, you're all being chased, right? Because even if you're right at the end, you've got the sweeper coming for you. So you don't have to be like, oh, I'm not a performance athlete. Like, you can set these little fear moments for yourself if it's helpful for you. If you're like, oh no, that would make me panic and that would affect my performance because like that triggers like an anxiety response and it's not useful. If it triggers a motivation response or a power forward response, it is useful. So yeah, I always come back to, it's not is it good or bad or right or wrong, it's is it helpful in the moment or not. So yeah, some people beat themselves up about having negative motivation, but it's all just a form of making us do stuff.
And the other point I was going to make was going back to episode 1, if you haven't listened to that already. Nikki manifests that she's going to be sick before a social run.
Yeah, absolutely. That, like, yeah, that is absolutely what is happening. Like, this always happens to me, and yeah, it can go both ways. It doesn't always have to be positive. It can go the other way. So, but then if we go back to that conversation, that's about reframing that manifestation. So that becomes I'm always sick before the run, therefore things happen, and if you get that gurgly belly or you get that feeling of anxiety, go, oh, that means I'm going to be sick. And then if you have like a relatively soft like gag reflex, or like if you get the bulk easily, right, it's quite easy for that thing, whoa, and then I've been sick, right? For other people that hate being sick, they're like, that's the worst possible thing ever. You'll have listeners just now, they're going, I'm turning that off, they're talking about spew, I can't deal with that, right? But it totally works in both ways. Like, do either of you like tighten up and get a bit niggly just before a race? Like, suddenly, like, I love those two completely different answers. Mike instantly shakes his head, Nicky's like, yeah, right? If we're in that taper phase and we're not good at relaxing into it, we suddenly go, oh, my hip's a bit tight, oh, my Achilles is a bit tight, oh, this hurts, oh, that hurts. And because you've gone that hurts, you tighten up and you tense up around it. And you probably haven't well, I don't know, I'm almost 40, I can literally dislocate a hip by rolling over in bed these days. But like, for the majority of us, you haven't magically picked up a niggle. It's just that you've decided that could be a bit tender. So you directly paid attention to it, which has made the muscles around it tense up, which then makes you panic a little bit. So if that's happening, something that's actually really useful is like body scan relaxation. There are a million like guided body scan relaxations on YouTube. Just put in body scan relaxation, and it's like step-by-step guide of focus on your forehead, relax it, let the tension go. And like I use it to fall asleep quite often, and it's like relax the tension in your jaw. And I'm like, I didn't realize I had this tension in my jaw, but now I'm paying attention to it, I will relax. And it's about directly paying attention to those areas of tension or stiffness or discomfort. And it's weird, but you can, with your mind, kind of let go of it a little bit. So if you manifest injury, or you manifest pre-race vomits or dodgy tummies or whatever it is, maybe just go and do a bit of body scan relaxation and pay a bit more attention to what's happening in your body.
I'm going to manifest I'm winning the lottery this week, even though I don't play it.
There is a perfect example of failed manifestation right there.
All right, on to the next question. I don't know if this is a listener one or not. Is working with coaches. You're a coach, you run a coaching business, but do you, or could you work with coaches, and how would you help them?
So it's so interesting, because in my gymnastics career, that's literally what I do these days. Although I run a club, and yes, I do have my own team that I kind of work across a couple of teams that I'm responsible for. Most of my job is actually helping in coach development, and I do that with Scottish Gymnastics and like within our own club. But it's so interesting when you start unpicking coaches' understanding and expectations of stuff, and it's absolutely something that I'm open to, because the coach has a direct impact on the athlete. You know, if you're working with a coach and you don't really feel like they care that much about you, or they don't know you that well, or they don't take into account things that you've said in feedback, it starts to affect their relationship. And I am all about athlete-centered coaching. And I like the health and the well-being of the athlete, regardless of the sport, regardless of the age, has to be number one. Because if you are not taking care of your athlete physically and psychologically, then you are setting them up for failure. And if your gratification comes from your athletes smashing like finish lines and whatnot, you're probably focusing on the wrong thing. Right? Like, yes, getting a good result in a race is a nice thing, but if that is at the expense of the athlete well-being, then you're going to burn that athlete out pretty quickly. You know, and equally, if you only celebrate the wins of your athletes and don't take time to unpick and discuss and kind of celebrate the stuff that goes wrong as well, then you start to impact that athlete's mindset, their well-being. And like, let's face it, if you are coached by somebody, particularly as an adult, right? If you are spending your hard-earned cash on outsourcing a service, right? Because let's face it, we could all go and download a training plan off of the internet. If you really want to do that, you can get one off of our website, right? But it's really impersonal. And if you want real motivation, it has to be personal. You have to know your people. You have to ask the right questions. You have to care about the right stuff. Like, we can write all the training plans in the world, but if we don't take into consideration that somebody's, I don't know, their partner's working away that week and they've got 3 kids at home that are under the age of 5, then us saying, well, you have to go out for a 10K run every day while you're working full time is completely unrealistic. So when we look at working with athletes, it's about, with coaches, it's really about understanding what is your motivation as a coach. Because if it's all about you and your brand and your glory and how good you are because you did that really good thing for somebody else, then your focus is in the wrong place. You know, it's lovely to get feedback from athletes saying, oh, this coach is brilliant, that coach is brilliant. But the relationship is really the bit that holds it all together. It's like that glue. And if you as an athlete feel cared for by your coach, that they know you, that they listen to you, that they put time and energy and effort into you, you're going to buy more into that relationship as well. So when it comes to this idea of working with coaches, I think it's about really just opening up conversation around what does good coaching look like. You know, and it's not just within running, it's like across sport, what does good coaching look like? Where do we screw stuff up? Where do we make mistakes? You know, like, do we put enough emphasis on recovery? Do we put enough emphasis on injury prevention? Because it's the bits that people don't like doing in their programs. When I'm in the gym, right, I've got 17 and 18-year-olds in one of my teams. He's trying to get them to do the basic, like, resistance band injury prevention stuff. It's a nightmare. Like, this is so boring. I'm like, well, that's really nice, but you're about to do, I don't know, a double twisting front somersault, right? If you land on dodgy ankles and dodgy knees, that's you out for the rest of the season. So it's being able to have those conversations around what are the nuts and bolts of stuff that matters. And some of that's in the physical prep, but so much of that is in the relationship as well.
That's a good answer. So the next question, I'm not sure I quite understand this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Hate to lose or love to win?
Did this come from a listener?
I think so.
Because it's such an interesting question, because it totally depends on the individual. Like, you get some brilliant competitors that are really good because they hate losing, right? You get some great competitors that are really good because they love winning. So I think it depends so much on the individual. I'd say the more important thing to reflect on around that is, what sort of winner or loser are you, right? Because you can hate to lose and be a good loser, or you can hate to lose and be a bad loser. And I think it's much more about that character piece in there that has the impact on the people around you, right? If you're like a bear with a sore head because you lost, like, we've got a friend who will not listen to this podcast, so I'll talk about this, but will remain anonymous, that we have a local quiz that we go to every year, and people don't want to be in his team because he's such a bad winner, right? He's a terrible loser, but he's an even worse winner. If he wins, he will rub it in your face, so much so that we take the mick out of it, you know? But it's really, like, it's at the point within our friendship group that it's really funny. But you see, if you didn't know him, you'd think, what a dick, right? You'd just be like, what are you doing? So it's really around, what does that bring out in you? Is it healthy for you to hate to lose? Like, what does that actually translate into in terms of behavior? Because if you're purely using it from a motivation perspective, right, Mike, you were saying earlier on, that fear of being chased, it's kind of the same thing, right? That fear of being chased and that person overtaking you, that's a hate to lose. So I don't want them to beat me, right? That doesn't mean it's a negative motivator. The same as the person that's like, well, I really want to win, I want to come first. Regardless of what's going on behind them, they're just in their own race and that motivates them. That doesn't make them a good or a bad winner or loser. That's just what motivates them over the finish line. So what motivates you is separate to how you deal with joy or disappointment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's made the question make more sense to me now, because I was like, eh?
Talking about bad winners, my 7-year-old, when she beats us at cards, she is the worst winner. She will dance about, rub it in, but it's funny. You almost encourage it because it's, go and win.
Yeah.
But
so it's quite an age and stage of development thing as well, because my daughter, who's now 11, almost 12, she's not a bad loser now, but she was for a while. Like, card games would, like, if she was losing, she'd just cheat.
Yep.
Whereas now, like, you go through, and a lot of that's like to do with your perception of the world, and your brain goes through so much development between like the ages of 7 and 10, and then again between the ages of 13 and about 21, that in that moment it's just me. It's like a selfishness that's cute when they're kids, right? It's then, how do we coach people through that so that when they're 25, 35, 55, they're not throwing the pack of cards in somebody's face and swearing at them and storming off in a huff.
Right. Next one was, I think we might have already answered it, but, well, everything's intertwined because it's human psychology. But aiming for the stars and you might get the moon. But failing to get to the stars, is that Let me ask that question again.
Shoot for the moon and land among the stars.
Yes.
Shoot for the moon, and even if you
But
don't
if you don't get to the stars, is that failing, or because you only got the moon?
I think it really depends on why you're doing what you're doing, right? If you're shooting for the moon, right, then the moon is like the glory. That's the A goal. Landing among the stars doesn't necessarily mean you failed. It just means that you didn't reach the A goal. Like, I'm a big believer in if you're planning for a race, right? This is something that Ross does religiously. It usually ends up on a spreadsheet that I meant to pay attention to while I'm crewing, right? He's like, if everything's going well, this is what my goal times are. These are like everything is perfect. The weather is perfect. My nutrition is perfect. My body feels great. I'm running well. This is the moon, right? It's usually known as a gold plan. This is what the moon is. If something happens along the way, it's not then, oh, well, I'm not playing because something went wrong and I didn't get that thing. It's, here's my silver, right? Here's my stars. Here's what it could look like. There's a few things are maybe going wrong. Maybe it's a bit hot. Maybe it's a bit wet. Maybe there's something that's affecting my times, right? It's defining what those stars are. There's usually about 3 more layers of this as well. It's like, if I'm still sitting at a checkpoint 19 hours after you were meant to pass, something's gone horribly wrong, right? But it's really defining what different levels of success look like, because especially in long races, there's so many things that you can't control. So it's not so much that you've missed the moon, it's did you clearly define the stars? Like, what are the other things that you're happy with or would be happy with if there are things outside of your control? And the more specific you are about that, the less disappointment you're going to feel. And the more you bring awareness to that and really take time and energy to think, well, what does this look like? Like, it might just be like we had a couple of clients last week that were doing the fling, right? And one of them was like, no, I want under this time and I want to beat that person. And I'm like, cool, go for it, right? The other one was like, I just really want to go and have a nice day out. Right? I want to stop and take the pictures, even if I get to the top of Conic and I can't see anything. It's like, I want to chat to people, I want to enjoy it. So their definition of success was completely different, right? Is the one that got under that time and beat that mate of his or rival of his, is his finish time better or more valuable than the guy who took his time and took some pictures? Absolutely not. They had really different goals in the first place. So it really just comes down to specificity of what is it you're trying to get out of this? Why are you doing it? What's the point? So what, right? So what, you beat that time. How do you actually feel about it? Are you pleased with it? Because that self-feedback is what really motivates us. Are you pleased with your performance? Yes or no? If the answer is no, what are you going to do differently next time? If the answer is yes, how are you building on that for next time?
And without saying who they are, did both your clients succeed?
They did. It's because we're awesome. We're taking all the credit. It's nothing to do with their hard work. No, they did. No, genuinely, they did. They both reached their goals, and it was so lovely because we got a message afterwards that was, it said thank you to me and to Ross for like our support, but that's the nice to have, right? It's the nice to have that recognition. That's not why we do it. We do it so that we'll see when they're out there or they're struggling on that lochside bit or they're on that roller coaster or they're about to whack their head off that stupid tunnel, right? See, in that moment, how they think and feel while they're out there, it's just as important as how they feel when they get over that finish line. And if you do something like this, where you're testing your limits, there has to be an acknowledgement that it's going to be hard. If you can go from start to finish and it's not hard at some point, you've not picked a big enough challenge. Like our real job is to help people find what that limit is and find what that motivation is and be with them in the successes. But if it all goes wrong, we don't go, oh, well, you're out the gang now. Sorry, you didn't meet our expectations. They're like, cool, it went wrong. That's all right. These things happen. How do we do it better next time?
And are pre-race rituals a good idea? Like, should people be doing a mental warm-up the same as runners should do the physical warm-up?
Yeah, well, isn't it interesting that the word should comes
Yes.
in there? It's like we should warm up. Right, Ross finished that run today, got straight in the car and didn't even like try and touch his toes beforehand. Couldn't get out of my car when I dropped him off, right? Our rituals around warming up and cooling down physically matter, and they should be getting done just the same as injury prevention and everything else. Our psychological warm up plays a massive role in that. You know, we're looking to actively train our brains to be on our side, to be our best friend, to be our biggest cheerleader, regardless of what your motivation is. You want to train those habits. And the more you train those habits, the more likely they are to appear on race day. And let's face it, like, how many runs do you do per year compared to how many races you do? Right? You might do a handful of races. Right? And yes, we want to turn up and have the best race ever, but stuff happens. You know, you can go over your ankle a few weeks before, Nikki, can't you? Right? Your car can break down on the way. You can't hinge everything on the success of that race, but we can prime ourselves to help things go better. And a lot of that comes down to, like, for some people it's visualization. It doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody can visualize stuff in their minds. If you've got a really visual mind and you can see pictures in your mind, use it to your advantage, right? Get as much footage of those races as you can so you know what is coming. Prepare yourself for where do you think it's going to be hard. Look at the terrain, look at the ascents, the descents, look at the elevation, look at all that stuff so that you are prepared for it. Going into it blind is setting yourself up for failure a lot of the time, because if you don't know that in the second third of on the second half of the race there's a big ass hill and you've spent everything up until that point, you are running as hard as you can, and that comes along, it's gonna knock you sideways. So the psychological preparation is everything from how do you pack your bags? What does your nutrition look like? How well are you taking care of yourself in the run up to the race? How well are you preparing yourself for the aftermath of the race? Like, the psychological stuff is not going, I'm going to go out and have a nice day today, right? The psychological stuff is how well are you taking care of yourself in the run up to it so that you can perform at your best? And that encompasses everything. It's not just thinking happy thoughts. It's confronting things about ourselves or our motivations that make us feel uncomfortable. It's challenging ourselves in our training within the sort of parameters that we set based on our goals. It's thinking about what am I going to do when I don't feel good, not if I don't feel good. At some point in a race, you're probably not going to feel good. Right? What do I do when that happens? So it's not a surprise. You're like, okay, cool. I stop for a minute. I soak my buff. I wash my face. I have some chewing gum. I stop and I jump up and down on the spot for a minute. I start counting. I use this ritual. I use this self-talk. I look at what's written in Sharpie on my arm to remind me of why I'm doing it. I phone a friend. I find somebody that I can run with. You have all those solutions there. So when it happens, your brain's not panicking and scrambling. Right? Psychological preparation is not some airy-fairy thing. It's risk management. It's risk assessment of what do I do in this situation. It's having those solutions to hand so you know what to do if something happens, rather than having to think about it in the moment. So yeah, I would say it is equally as important as your physical training. I would even go as far as to say if you've got the physical training down and that's all working, it's more important. It's the difference between failure and success, regardless of how you define those two words.
And the final question that we've got written down is, I think you might have, well, it's kind of related to the last one, knowing what you have to do. And it's such a broad question that I'm going to ask. You might want to limit it down to under race circumstances. What do you do when the proverbial hits the fan and it all goes wrong?
This is where I really annoyingly come back to a rugby anecdote here. The New Zealand All Blacks have a bunch of principles. I could do an entire podcast about that, right? But in relation to this question, the one that sort of jumps to mind is their principle of keep a blue head, right? And it's this idea that blue in that sort of New Zealander culture is about staying calm under pressure. And if you look at how they have managed to grind out win after win after win, it often comes down to the fact that when they're in a tight spot, instead of losing the head, they keep it blue. They stay calm, they focus on their goals. And if we are able to say, okay, things are not going well right now, that's okay. I've got my risk assessment, I've got my plan, then you're much more likely to manage the chaos or manage the problem in a really calm way rather than get panicked and worked up, because getting panicked and worked up is a natural response, but it expels a huge amount of energy. You know, if you start getting worked up and anxious and frustrated, your breathing goes, your blood pressure raises, you flood your system with cortisol, which pretty much wipes out all your serotonin, dopamine, all of that stuff. It stops you from being able to think clearly. So we really just want to stop and take a moment to focus on our breathing. You can do this while you're still running. You know, you just go into much more mindful breathing of, right, let's really pay attention to that breath coming in through my nose and into my lungs. Let's hold it a little bit longer. Let's really oxygenate through that. Let's properly breathe out, expel all of that oxygen from our lungs, because it sounds really silly. People focus on your breathing, but actually being mindful and thinking, where is that air moving through my body, distracts your brain, brings your blood pressure down, slows your heart rate down, as a result starts to counteract those stress hormones that kick off when things start to go wrong. So we want to just bring it back to breathing, and then we start to ground ourselves, you know, either count your breaths, go through a body scan yourself, and then frame whatever the chaos is as part of the challenge. You know, it's that moment of, oh no, it's all gone wrong. You have a choice in that moment to say, it's gone wrong, I might as well just give up, or it's going wrong, what am I going to do about it? Okay, I come back to this like wrinkle in the sock theory. You can leave your wrinkle in your sock because you can't be bothered, or you think it's going to like hamper your time by stopping for 30 seconds to fix it. Okay, or 5 seconds to fix it, or you can keep running and end up with a massive blister. Taking a minute to stop and ground yourself is much more likely to just bring you back down to a space for some rational thinking than allowing yourself to panic. Let's face it, like, say sometimes you need a little vent, right? See, if you're out in the hills and you need to shout into the hills and be angry for a minute, then feel it. Like, we're not trying to minimize the emotion. Like, the emotion is important. You just don't want it to take it with you. It's like if those emotions are cars passing on a road, you're not getting in the car and going with it. You're going, oh, that's passing by. Right? So it's like, pay attention to what that emotion is, but don't let it take it with you. You can go, I feel really angry just now. Okay, cool. Why do I feel angry? I'm really frustrated just now. Why do I feel frustrated? What am I going to do about it? How do I improve this? And it all comes down to how comfortable you are having difficult conversations with yourself. Because when you're out there in the moment, if you've not practiced this stuff, it's not going to come to you. That's why, like, linking back to that previous question, the psychological practice matters, because you want that response to be automatic. You want, oh, something's happening. What's my checklist for this? What do I do? Not, oh, I'd better invent a checklist right now. You need to prepare yourself for, in that moment, you want to be able to access that information. To be able to access that information, it needs to be second nature. For it to be second nature, you have to practice it. And for you to practice it, you have to make time for it. And for you to make time for it, you need to look at your training and consider where you make time for that. And you need to have conversations with people that are going to help you make that a reality. So it's like everything that we're about is this holistic approach to performance. You know, it's, yeah, you can have a great training plan, but if you don't have the tools that you need to put it into action, it doesn't mean anything. Right? You can do all the training in the world, but if you can't cope with a minor inconvenience on the day and that sets off your whole race, the training doesn't really matter. Right? We need that mind to be with us. We need that head to be clear so that you can follow your race plan on the day.
And your example there started with the All Blacks.
Yeah.
And before every match, they've got the haka, where they basically scare their opponent, showing that they are in control. And at the start of the Four Nations Backyard Championship, this year, I was chosen to be the team captain, and I tried to not scare the opponents, but motivate the team, and I did it publicly in front of the other teams, so they knew that we were a team, we were bonding as a team. Is that a sort of teamwork? It's not a normal thing within running, but is it something that you have part of it as your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's working out who your team is in running, right? In that sort of Four Nations environment, like Ross was part of that, so I could sort of got like an insider's view into how all of that was. And I was actually so admirable of what you were doing there, because you're like, we're trying to pull people together. When you've got a bunch of individuals who, in a very individualistic sport, it's maybe not their natural tendency to build on each other and rely on each other like that. It's really about setting that culture. For most runners, it's working out who is your team. You know, who are those people that have got your back? Who will like run with you? Like, because I'll be honest, I will crew Ross until the sun comes down, right? I'm not coming to Golf Spade because it clashes with, you know, the rest of my life. But you very kindly, Mike, said that you would do that, which made me very happy. But like, I'll crew him to the end of the world, right? I will be in every car park. I will serve him mashed potatoes with tomato sauce at 4 o'clock in the morning. I will heat up custard. I'll sometimes touch his feet, right? If it's
I'm not
extreme,
touching his feet. No,
if it's extreme,
out of bounds.
avoid his wee pinky toe. That's my nugget of advice for you there, right? I will do in that moment what is required. What I will not do is run with him, right? Because there's no point in me running with him, right? I'm not his running buddy, right? I am his kick his butt when he needs it buddy. I'm his give him a hug when he needs it. I'm his give him his food, sort out the childcare, make sure the dog's getting fed. I draw the line at putting the washing away, you know, but like there's stuff that I will do in order to make his run easier for him. But he needs to pull on other people if he needs a support runner with him, you know? And that's where your community matters. And the running community is beautiful like that, you know, like the ability to rally round, and like it's so emotional being at a finish line or being part of a crew. Like I have cried more at like Tyndrum and in the bloody sports centre in Fort William than I care to admit, because it's just this space of togetherness. And when you spend an awful lot of time alone running, that togetherness becomes more and more important. You know, those people that you can phone or are waiting for you smiling at a checkpoint with a flag that they've made or a banner that they've made, or that person that stepped up and said, I'll take the kids for the weekend so you guys can go and do this. Nor the person that will run with you as a little tiny section of whatever run it is that you're doing just to keep you motivated. That's your team in this sport. Like obviously there are examples where we can be more like kind of like big team, like the Scotland team, things like that. We can create that culture there. But for individuals, it's working out who is your team, who are your biggest cheerleaders, who's got your back. And if you're sitting there going, I don't know who those people are yet, they're there, right? They're like, I have been fascinated watching at how the running community embraces people. That doesn't mean it's all roses every single day, right? But you can get out there and you can talk to people and you can find your people out there, and they want to run and support just as much as you want to run and support. And it's being open to letting that bit in, because that's where so much joy comes from. You know, like you can get the joy of crossing the finish line, but you get just as much joy watching your pal finish a race. You know, you get just as much joy helping them out of a checkpoint when it's, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, you're getting eaten alive by midges at Kinlochleven or whatever it might be. You're like, I get lots of joy when people do international races, and I go, oh yes, I'm sure you need a crew sitting at the poolside while you run around in the mountains. But it's a beautiful way to bring people together, and I think it's often overlooked because running seems like such an individual sport, but you have to make time for those social runs as well, for that community bit to build, because you give yourself so much more than just exercise by building a family around it.
And
so I have one final question that isn't wrote down, Mike, and I forgot to put it on the list. So I hope I'm not ambushing you here, Alice. but it was definitely a listener question, and it's book recommendations if you have any. In the first episode, you mentioned a couple of good ones. Is there any particular ones you would really recommend that jump out at you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll always come back to the chimp paradox. I think the chimp paradox for runners is like a brilliant place to start, because that balance between your chimp and human brain is so useful. If you're really into the All Blacks, then there is actually a book all around like that culture that they build, which is purely interesting reading, but also directly links to sports, kind of guided a bit more towards business. But like they go through, it's by James Kerr, it's called Legacy. They go through like all the different principles that underpin the All Blacks. If you're interested in the psychology side of it, we've got Mindset by Carol Dweck. You've got Flourish by Martin Seligman. You've got The How of Happiness by Sonia Lubomirsky. I could give you a reading list the length of your arm, but I think a lot of it comes down to, if you are interested in this stuff, it's just being brave enough to pick up a book or listen to a podcast or listen to an audiobook on your long run that challenges the way that you think. Like, I know there's the big ones out there in the running world of your Goggins and your this and your that and your whatever, but a lot of the time you can apply learning from all other walks of psychology into running directly. So just be a little bit brave and go and read Why Start With Why by Simon Sinek. You know, it's a business book, but it's all about purpose. Go and read Drive by Dan Pink. You know, it's about the science of what truly motivates us. Go and read When by Dan Pink. It'll help you work out when to do your runs. Right, there's 1,000,001 books out there, so yeah, I can give you a full reading list, but it'll keep you going until, I don't know, the end of time.
Well, you mentioned it is there, so I'm going to bring it up. Thoughts on Goggins and his approach to motivation?
I'm going to say something really controversial. I've never read it or listened to it. I don't know. I think it works for some people and it works for others based on it doesn't work for others. I think like it's all go as hard as you can, right? It's like, yeah, like it's an interesting one because different people are motivated differently, and I'm not going to tear down somebody else's philosophy, because if it works for them and it helps other people, then yeah. If it doesn't though, and I think this is where like we need to give people permission. If it doesn't work for you, then put it down. You know, like it's the same as like advice and criticism. Just because somebody gives you a bit of advice doesn't mean it works for you. Just because somebody says these shoes are great doesn't mean they work for you. Just because somebody says I prefer this brand of lubrication doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You know, whatever, like all these weird recommendations that we get in the running world. If it suits your temperament and your personality and you get something out of it, celebrate it and share it, but just don't force it down other people's throats if it doesn't work for them.
Pretty much like anything in life, religion, politics, everything.
It gives a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the end of our question set. We have one subject left, which was imposter syndrome, and we've agreed we'll come back and do another episode.
Absolutely.
So for tonight, it draws us to an end. It has been fantastic. The fact that we're inviting you back for part 3 says it all. So all I can say is, Alice, we look forward to the next episode. Thank you for coming on. Nikki, thank you for being Nikki. And it's goodbye from me.
Thanks, Alice.
Oh, thanks so much. I look forward to next time.